Uh-oh. Hey, there we go. A little false start there. Welcome back into episode 15 of the Ohio State of Mind podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Chen. On the other side of me, with me is Josh Keatley. And the biggest Buckeye news is not actually Buckeye news this past week. It is Michigan's Jim Harbaugh, which is what we chatted about, or ex-Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. I guess we could say we talked about it a little bit in the podcast at the end of last week, how he was most likely taking the Chargers job. Well, that came to fruition. And I don't think a lot of Michigan fans are extremely happy about that. And part of the reason why is because Harbaugh gutted the program, took multiple big-time assistants with him. And, it's lovely to see. I love it. They win a championship, which who knows if they'll actually get to keep that or not. And on top of that, Harbaugh does what Harbaugh does, best, and just looks out for himself and does what he wants. And, I think that's, to be honest with you, I think that was the Buckeyes game. Jeff, what were your thoughts on, the official announcement when Harbaugh went over to the Chargers?
Well, first of all, I want to say this is our first podcast going live, so hopefully we don't say any F-bombs or anything too crazy.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it peaceful. We'll try.
No, man, we expected this, right? We expected Harbaugh to leave.
Of course.
He's been applying for NFL jobs. Basically, been applying for NFL jobs since he's had a winning enough record to get to the NFL.
Right.
My understanding is that he had interviews with both the Vikings and the Broncos. The Broncos said no immediately. Mm-hmm. And then the Vikings, I guess he thought he had the job during his second interview. It was basically like, where's my office? And they said, no, dude.
During National Signing Day as well.
Yep. Thank you for pointing that out on National Signing Day, which is obviously a big no-no for anybody that wants to come back.
Exactly.
Right? So it's just he wanted out. I think that before I start bashing Harbaugh, I want to be very clear. I think that Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in college football. Colby Dant of the Sports Gambling of the College Football Experience, which is part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, he said that he believes Harbaugh is a better coach than Nick Saban, which kind of raises an eyebrow. It does. But honestly, I don't know if I disagree with that, because if you look at what Harbaugh's done, this is a guy that went to San Diego at the FCS level and recruited guys like Josh Johnson, who had an 11-year career in the NFL. I mean, there's not a lot of FCS guys that have done that, and Harbaugh did that. That was transformed that program. It was already kind of a winning program, but into a dominant program. I mean, that was a school that we played, and they beat us like 80-0. Then he went to Stanford, and he left Stanford. Stanford hasn't won since, right? And that's a guy who had McCaffrey, Gerhardt, had Andrew Luck, right? He won some games at Stanford, and then he went to Michigan. He struggled a little bit. And, there's a little bit of a cloud of doubt around what he did at Michigan and why it took so long and yada, yada, yada. But I think that once he got to Michigan, the problem was, one of the reasons why it took so long is that in college football, there's a lot of exterior voices screaming at you. That's one of the reasons why I think Mike Elko is going to have a hard time at Texas A&M. Because it's the people who have the money have the voice. In the NFL, in smaller college football, you get a little bit more freedom to do what you want, identify talent, all that good stuff. But whatever, I'm kind of getting off a tangent. I just want to make sure that I made it very clear. I do believe that Jim Harbaugh is a great coach, but he definitely wanted out. Michigan Michigan is the same way, right? You got to listen to boosters that are complaining. You got recruiting is really hard, especially if you're a goofball. And Harbaugh's kind of a goofy dude. I don't think he was recruiting. Kind
of is being nice.
I mean, he was inviting 17-year-old boys to sleep over or whatever. He's just a weird dude. He's a weird dude. He was, you could see it. And it's really hard to be a weird dude in college football because so much of it is you basically stroking the ego of 18-year-old kids. I think he wanted out. I do think it's funny that Michigan fans seem to think that the NCAA ran him off.
Or Ohio State ran him off. And
it's like
Ryan Day's master plan to run him off.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, he's been wanting to leave, but whatever, man. So it is what it is. I think that they got I think that Sharon Moore, Harbaugh being suspended last year is probably the best thing that could have happened to Michigan if you look at their future plans. Because Sharon Moore kind of proved himself. I think that was a good hire. I think that was a really good hire to make sure that you keep the nucleus of your team, what's left of it, from departing the transfer portal. I think that he's proven it. I think that It would have taken a lot of balls to move away from Sherrone Moore. So I
Sure,
think that was probably a bit higher. I think they're going to have to be patient. I think that they're going to not be very good for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's Sherrone Moore's fault. I think that you kind of want to talk about that a little bit, but Jim
Mm-hmm.
Harbaugh absolutely gutted them. I mean, he took their strength and conditioning coach, which, as you know, Michigan does a great job of not recruiting talent, but developing talent. Strength and conditioning is part of that. He's taking Jesse Minter, who's probably one of the best coordinators in all college football, and has proven that. And then, of course, he's taken the heartbeat of the Michigan football program in Jay Harbaugh. I mean, what are they going to do without Daddy's little sunshine?
I don't know. They're in a tough position to replace that guy.
But we Googled that, though. That's not official yet, right? That's not official.
Right. Yeah.
But I know you had a couple things to add about that.
Like you said, gutting the program. This is something that when Ohio State saw Urban Meyer leave off the NFL, he didn't gut the program. You look at it like Mark Pantoni stayed, Mickey Mariotti stayed. It was a time where he could have very well just said, all right, I'm taking my guys with me and I'm running off to the NFL and, I'm going to do what I need to do out there. And he didn't. And I think that shows a level of care for the program. It's just different because, again, Harbaugh seems like a me guy. He's me. He's like, I need what I need. And it's just about me. And I think that proved a lot to Michigan fans, to everybody, that Jim Harbaugh, doesn't care about what he leaves behind in his legacy. And his legacy now is, a lot of people online have been complaining about the fact that he did that. And I can't disagree with them. A lot of Michigan fans are very, very angry about the fact that he's just like, I'm going to take my guys and, program does what the program does now. Yeah, Sherrone Moore, like you said, I think that's the most logical hire. It made the most sense. From what I have seen, I don't think any players have entered the portal. However, there is one caveat with that due to the academic calendar. When he decided to leave the semesters, quarters, whatever system that all these schools are in, they had already started classes. And that's one of the things that we saw Ohio State take full advantage of, especially with, like, say, Caleb Downs, for instance. He entered the portal and right away he had to make a decision, because if not, he would have kind of been in limbo for the next few months. And he was able to enroll in classes in Ohio State pretty quickly. Obviously, the guys that, all the Alabama guys who ended up, aside from, Seth McLaughlin, who, Julian Sayin, those two guys, they had to make quick decisions. All the Alabama guys, they had to make quick decisions. And the Michigan guys, they're in a position where, they wouldn't be able to enroll in those schools. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of attrition now. I think we're going to see a lot more attrition come the spring. I think a lot of players are kind of, going to go through the motions and realize, this is not necessarily the place that you want to be at. There's a lot of guys that people want too. I mean, let's be real here. The roster they had some pretty good guys, especially along the lines. And you have to wonder, what are we going to see come when the portal opens again in the spring? I think you are going to see a lot of Michigan guys leaving. The question is now, do we see Buckeyes that are former Michigan Wolverines come the fall? I don't know. There is precedence with it, obviously. The Boren brothers. Justin started his career at Michigan, transferred over to Ohio State. His brother Zach was committed to Ohio State, and I think they wanted to play together. And I think there's one season that they played together, and there's history there. So it's not out of the ordinary. So we'll see. I don't know, but again, I really think that we're going to see most of the movement come in spring, not right now.
It should also be noted, this is a good history lesson. Okay, I believe, and someone double check me if I'm wrong, JT White was the first poor person to transfer between rival schools.
Okay.
He started his career at Ohio State, won a national championship at Ohio State, went to serve in the war, came back, enrolled in Michigan, won a national championship with Michigan.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong with that.
That's way back.
We're talking like the 40s. Yeah. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, I believe that was like the first guy to do it. Yeah, man, this is the new wave of college football, bro. First of all, money talks, right? Well, let me go back to the Harbaugh. Let me go back to the Harbaugh thing, because I do think that there is Harbaugh. I don't think that Harbaugh there's a middle ground. I don't think Harbaugh deserves as much hate towards taking and gutting his staff as he's getting, but he does deserve some hate, right?
Agreed. Oh, 100%.
I think when Urban didn't gut the Ohio State program, it was less because of his respect for Ohio State, and it was more because he knew that he was going in, that many of the people that he surrounded himself with at Ohio State were not NFL caliber guys, right? And that's not a bad thing. I just think that Ohio State's offense, even under the Urban Meyer era, wasn't really a defense, whatever you want to call it, whatever was going on at the time was not of NFL caliber. I think Harbaugh has that NFL experience. Obviously, he was with the Niners. I didn't even mention that. He took the Niners to the Super Bowl, right? So he knows kind of what it takes.
Sure.
So I think that there was more like, hey, this guy's got NFL traits. This guy has NFL traits. So I think that that's why I don't want to completely act like Urban Meyer is the saint who didn't gut the Ohio State program because he loves Ohio State. Maybe that was the case, but I think it was had more to do with him not knowing where to go or what to do as far as assistant coaches in the NFL, which obviously showed up in his short tenure up there. But like you said, but back to the transfer thing. Yeah, man, this is new age college football. You're already seeing it, right? I was listening to a baseball podcast, and those guys are, you got guys from transfer from Ole Miss to Mississippi State. You're seeing that a little bit in college football team guys transferring from USC to UCLA or UCLA to USC, stuff like that. It's hard to envision that as Ohio State fans like us taking somebody from Michigan. But that, you're in it to win it, baby. Like if Will Johnson enters the portal, you better bet you're behind that Ohio State's going to try to unload the NIL gauntlet to get a talent like that in Columbus. And
why not?
Yeah, I'll be the first in line waiting, to say hello. So you know what I mean? Like that's how it goes. We thought it was cool when Justin Bourne did it, right? What's the difference now? So
right. No, I agree with you on that. Just it kind of depends on who they're going to go after. Do they have that previous relationship? Where they recruited out of high school. Like there's multiple guys on Michigan's team that were recruited out of high school, so there is a relationship because Ohio State staff really hasn't changed much over the last 3 years. Well, a little bit more obviously on the offensive side now, but I don't think that, that changes much. Justin Fry's still there. Obviously Bill O'Brien's the new addition on the offensive side, and the defense is, all those guys, for the most part, they're all still around. They're all still hanging around. So I think that, it depends. It depends on the fit, which, I think it has to do with that. When you're transferring, it really depends on. It's not all about NIL. NIL is a portion of it. NIL does play into it. NIL is the way that you can kind of lure a player from going from one way to the other, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about fit and where they feel like they can achieve their goals. And I think if a player fits from the Michigan team, that fits with what Ohio State's vision is, what they need specifically, I wouldn't mind, another linebacker, another offensive lineman as well, And I think that has a lot to do with it. The fit. It's all about the fit.
Yeah, and I apologize. I shouldn't have just pounded on the NIL chest. I guess, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about programs like Michigan and Ohio State, you're talking about they're wanting elite athletes, elite players, and those guys that you're recruiting typically have goals, right? Jeremiah Smith didn't go to Ohio State because he grew up an Ohio State fan. No, he went to Ohio State because that's who's going to develop into a first-round pick. Right. Now there is, again, there are going to be guys on the roster. I can't name any from Michigan, right? Because I don't know that off the top of my head, but like at a place like Ohio State, you're going to have guys like Gabe Powers, a kid who grew up 45 minutes away, who's not going to leave Ohio State, right? Even if someone calls him with a bag of NIL, that kid's not going to leave because he grew up an Ohio State fan. Same with Will Smith Jr., right? Dad went to Ohio State. Probably the same with Sonny Styles, whose dad went to Ohio State. Jalen Pace, who was a preferred walk-on. Guys like that, they're not going to leave, right? But so your Michigan's going to have that as well. But you're going to take, as far as the studs go, Mason Graham on the defensive line, Will Johnson at defensive back. You're gonna snag those guys.
Yeah.
And those guys are going to leave because they're wanting to be developed. They're wanting to be in the NFL. I mean, assuming that they didn't grow up Michigan fans or, their dads didn't play there, yada, yada, yada.
Right. Yeah, no, and another name that I'd throw out there is Kenneth Grant. I think he's a sophomore defensive tackle who had a type of All-American season their trader. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, but again, it's about winning. And if these guys are going to help Ohio State win, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And like you can, it's cutthroat out there. People don't necessarily want to see that, but I'm okay with it. And again, it has to be the certain fit. It has to be a guy that they need. It has to be a guy that's going to come in and play. I think that's one of the biggest things that Ohio State did over this transfer portal era, or not era, I guess. I don't know what you call it. Because there's 2 transfer portal seasons. It's really hard to say what they are. But in this cycle, Ohio State went out and they got players that are going to make an impact right away. Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard. You're talking Will Kazmarek. Even though like he might not start right away, I think he's going to play a good amount. He's a good blocking tight end, which I think is something that the Buckeyes have kind of missed over the course of the season, last few seasons. So yes, we're being a little traitorous, and I don't disagree with that. But again, I think that if it fits with what Ohio State needs, then why not?
Can I say right now, so because we've been doing this podcast for a while now, right? Different platforms and all that, but we have been doing it for a while. My favorite offseason storyline, I want to track this. We should keep a tracker of things that we notice or things that we keep bringing up, right? Mine is my hatred towards Ryan Day, but yours is the hatred towards that Ohio tight end. Every time you bring him up, you say he's probably not going to start. He's probably just going to be a guy. I completely disagree. I think he's going to be. I hope he proves me wrong.
I hope he proves me wrong. Look, Will, if you're listening, which you probably not. But look, I feel like at the end of the day, you go out and you get guys that we don't want to get guys that are like mid-level dudes. Right, you want those elite guys. You want the Downs. You want the Judkins, like Wolf Oakland said. Judkins is a monster, right? And you want those type of guys. And just being selfish, understanding what the roster needs. It just didn't make sense to me to use the scholarship on a guy who might play. Ohio State's trying to win a championship in 2024. Right?
See this.
They're not trying to win a championship in 2 years, 3 years. Right? This roster is built to win right now.
Right.
You want guys that are going to help right now. And I don't know if he's going to help right
now. It was funny before the show, we talked about this being a short one. This is the topic. This is the topic that's going to extend it. Here's the situation. So the guys, Quinshon Judkins. Let's go through the list. Let's go through the list of elite guys, okay? Because Will Howard, that I'm not going to put him in the elite. He's not in the same barrel as Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs, right? Yeah, he's no different than there's always a rash of transfer quarterbacks. You're always going to have Dylan Gabriel. Look at the court. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Dylan Gabriel, Jaden Daniels. Those guys, right?
All transfers. Yep.
And Will Howard is a tier below all those guys. There's always going to be quarterbacks. So that's kind of a tier of their own. Guys that are trying to make more cash. Guys that are trying to move up, yada, yada, yada. So we're going to put that to the side. Quinshon Judkins is leaving because Ole Miss is disrespectful to the guys that are staying, right? Lane Kiffin has gone the opposite route of what Ohio State done. Ohio State takes all their NIL money, they distribute it to the guy. That if you want to talk about the $13 million, that big number that's being floated out, if Ohio State spent $13 million on anything, it's on keeping guys to stay. Agreed. Ole Miss doesn't do that. Quinshon Judkins clearly felt disrespected and elected to leave the portal. That might happen. I don't think that, but how many of those guys were there this cycle?
I mean, there's plenty of like elite guys. Yeah, I mean, Ohio State obviously waited.
That's an All-American guy. That's an All-American level guy, right?
No, they waited on a quarterback, which I'm okay with because I think Will Howard fits what they're looking for. They didn't need necessarily that. Like they needed a bridge. It's all they needed this year, right? We saw what the 2 backups were doing. We saw what Keenholz did. We saw what Brown did. Right? I mean, we can't really judge what Keenholz is off of 3 quarters when he wasn't really the guy. He probably didn't get the majority of snaps in ball practice, et cetera, right? But he's not ready, and neither of them were ready. And they needed a guy that was ready. Julian Sayin, is he ready? I don't think as a true freshman, he's not ready. So I'm good with what Will Howard is. I'm good with what he brings, the experience, the fact that he's more of a runner. I think that aspect really helps the Buckeye offense.
I was by no means shitting on Will Howard. I was saying that the tight end from Ohio. I was defending the tight end from Ohio and saying
yes,
that's going to be your portal guy. That's going to be your standard portal guy, right? Because Quinshon Judkins is not. That is a rare feat. There's going to be 3 of those guys a year, right? Wouldn't you say?
well, I mean, the Buckeyes got 2 of them.
Then the other guy's Caleb Downs, right?
Yeah.
But Caleb Downs is only in the portal because Nick Saban left.
That is true. 100%.
Right? So you're going to see more of that. That you're certainly going to see coaches leave and the portal get filled with stars from that regime, right?
Sure.
I think that's going to be more common than the Quinshon Judkins. I think Quinshon Judkins, a guy of that caliber entering the portal with the coaching staff remaining unchanged, is going to be a rarity, right? But if you look at a guy like Seth McLaughlin, who was a big heavy hammer at Alabama, that guy had snapping issues the last 2 years. There were reports from Alabama. There's reports from beat writers in Alabama that said they didn't even want him there, right? That they were ready to move on, or there was going to be a competition, or yada yada yada. Davidson Igbinosun, that guy didn't play at Ole Miss. Tywan Malone, that guy didn't play at Ole Miss.
Well, Tywan Mullen didn't. Igbinosun did. Igbinosun played a lot. He was pretty good. I believe he was a freshman All-American.
Was he a freshman All-American?
I'm pretty sure he was.
We'll have to.
He played a lot. He played a lot.
Regardless, most of the guys that they add from the portal, unless you're talking Tanner McAllister, Tanner McAllister, I believe he was a freshman All-American, but again, he followed Jim Knowles. They're going to be guys with issues. If they're coming from those star schools, they're going to be guys with issues, or they're going to come from, they're going to be like Josh Simmons from San Diego State, who's trying to
Igbinosun was a freshman All-American.
He started every game at Ole Miss.
He did not start every game. He started 10 games and played in all 13.
So why did he leave? Why did he leave?
I don't know. Better opportunity. BIA, baby.
Jesus. I think that is still that situation is still going to be a rarity.
It happens. Guys aren't happy. Some, maybe he wasn't happy there. Ohio State recruited him out of high school too. Again, I think a lot of this comes back to relationships. Do you have that relationship with the guy? And Ohio State had that relationship. Ohio State, again, Caleb Downs. Ohio State had that relationship with Caleb Downs, right? Now, I think you're right. I think you're right on the fact with Judkins. Like, Judkins is like, he's an anomaly. We're not going to see that a lot. But a guy like Downs, who was recruited, Ohio State finished second in Downs' recruitment, right? Against Alabama. And I think it was natural for him to go back there. And look at like Caden Proctor, right? The offensive tackle from Alabama who ended up transferring back to Iowa, right? Well, at one point in time, committed to Iowa, right? From Iowa.
Okay.
They reached out in the middle of the season and said, hey, man, keep your head up. You're doing great. We want to see you excel. And a lot of people thought that was like tampering, but in all reality, they had that previous relationship. It's not like it was a new staff coming in and, Kirk Ferentz really doesn't fire anybody. So, it's a relationship thing to me. It's all about the transfer portal for the most part. I'd say like 95% of transfer, it's all about relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So Chris, the guy who recruited Davidson Igbinosun at Ole Miss, Chris Patridge, was fired by Lane Kiffin. That's why Igbinosun entered the portal.
That was his high school. That was his high school football coach.
Okay, so you're gonna have that's gonna be more common than Caleb Downs, right? Than the head coach firing. But
agreed.
Because there's gonna be assistants all the time. But still, that's not gonna be. Again, I just don't know if that's gonna be. I still feel like that caliber player is good. Okay, I guess here's the question: How many transfers are you bringing in on a yearly basis?
Well, it depends. Ohio State, like Ohio State, for instance, recruits at an elite level. Now we don't know how well Alabama is going to continue to recruit, but Ohio State and Georgia right now are the top dogs in recruiting. Now that Nick Saban's gone, do they need guys all the time? No, I don't think so. When you look at everyone's up in arms about Ohio State's transfer portal class, they got 6 guys, right? That's not a huge transfer portal class. This is not Colorado where you're bringing in 20. I don't think they're done either. Like I said, I do think that a linebacker and an offensive lineman are probably 2 of their biggest needs at the current moment with the current roster the way it is right now. But I think you'll see attrition come the spring. But again, this is not Colorado where Deion Sanders signed 6 dudes. On National Signing Day, and then he's going 20 some odd,
But
I think it's like 24, 25 guys out of the transfer portal. You're never going to see that at Ohio State.
That's an anomaly. Right?
What I'm saying is, right. But I think that's a good number, though, because attrition happens. I mean, next year, you're going to see a lot of dudes leaving, right? Because eligibility exhausted. You're going to have some guys leave early for the NFL. If they win a title, maybe they come back. I don't know. Maybe this is a trend that they're starting. I mean, Ohio State's done this before. Like Mike Doss. Mike Doss could have left before they won the title, and Mike Doss stayed, right? That was one of his – he said that at the bowl game afterwards, I believe it was the Fiesta Bowl. He said, I'm coming back to win a championship. There are guys like that. It's not crazy to think.
Right. I guess I was just defending the Ohio tight end because I believe that that's probably going to be the norm. I think if you tallied the best transfers, if you tallied the best incoming transfers in the Big Ten last year, there's probably more guys that came from smaller programs than larger. Like Simmons would be on that list from San Diego State, right? Yolade or whatever, however you pronounce his name, the tackle from Maryland who was an All-American at Frostburg State at Division II school. That guy's going to be on the list. I was going to say, what was it? Dante Cephas, the wide receiver from Kent State that went to Penn State. He would have been on the list if they could throw the ball, but I guess that was my point. I know what you're saying though, right? When and Igbinosin, like you said, freshman All-American, Caleb Downs, freshman All-American, Quinshon Judkins, I think he's on everybody's All-American list. When those guys are in the portal, you got to make a move.
Right.
But I don't.
Those feelers up. I agree with you. I don't think this is the norm. I don't think it is, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary to believe that Ohio State's going to land at least one or two of the high-end guys every year.
Right.
I don't think so.
And they should, but I'm saying there's only going to be 5 high-end dudes. There's going to be a year where that doesn't happen, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Does that make sense?
No,
it's a bad thing if Ohio State can't get the 5-star guys because they've been recruiting those guys, they've been developing a relationship with those guys, but the transfer portal, a lot of it's I don't want to say it's the magic 8 ball, but like you said, there's a lot of variables that go into it. Those guys have already played college ball. They've developed relationships elsewhere. It might not break Ohio State's way. So I don't think that should be seen as a negative if Ohio State gets, they're going to have one year where they get 5 guys from the MAC conference or whatever. And I don't think that's necessarily a death note, if that makes sense.
If they're getting, the best MAC guys, I think that's okay. That's all right. I do want to see it. And I think you do a great job of breaking those players down. If you go check out Buckeyes Wire, Josh, I'm going to hype Josh up for a second. He does a really good job of understanding what those college players are and grab them. And I think that it's a year-to-year thing. I think it's just like, all right, every year it's just going to be like, we're just going after the top guys. And once again, it's about fit. It's about whether they fit in the scheme. It's about whether they're going to work. You don't want guys like Vic Cutler who come in here and expect to play and sit for a season and then go right back into the transfer portal, right? Well, I don't think that's the norm. I think it's going after guys that fit your system that are going to play right away. And that was my biggest concern about what Ohio State was initially doing with the transfer portal. They were reaching for guys. And Ohio State's not a school where you should have to go reach for guys and hope that they turn into what you want them to be. You go out and get the guys that you can just plug and play, and they'll just be those dudes.
Well, and Victor Cutler, that's a good example of someone who's on the other end of the spectrum because Victor Cutler did not have Victor Cutler was not an all Sun Belt player, right? So why Ohio State went after him was more of a desperation move. So I agree with you there. The Victor Cutlers are not a good idea, right?
Right. Yes, of course. And I think that when you look at what Ohio State did previously and what they're doing now, there's a change, and was part of it. Michigan winning a title. I do think that does have to, that plays a little bit up into it because, when your rival wins and just kind of beats up everybody and took advantage of I would say a weak college football, landscape this year. I don't think that any team was elite. I think that Michigan was good, and not to take away from their accomplishments, but is there a team where just like that's like the team of the decade?
I'm not going to crap on Michigan because they Blake Corum and JJ McCarthy, those guys did come. Blake Corum did come back. That's a guy that could have left. Mm-hmm. And they had 40 seniors. 40. You know what I mean? So when you have 30-year-olds playing, that's I think that Michigan was a dominant team. I'm not taking anything away from them. I do think that the uptick, but you're right. That's also caused the panic or the uptick that you're seeing with what Ryan Day is doing. I don't want to use the word panic because Victor Cutler, I believe, was probably a panic move. We need offensive line depth. This guy's here. Let's go. We whiffed at the time. They whiffed on everybody else, right? They grabbed him. This is not a panic move, but they are probably some of the guys. Like, okay, if it wasn't for him getting cracked by Michigan 3 years in a row, he probably would have let Dalen Hayden and Travion Henderson be the duo, but because he's willing to throw the Hail Mary, bring in Judkins, do what he's got to do.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
we got a question here from Michael Small. Hey, Mike, are the starting linebackers in the roster right now, or is there a likely portal addition that becomes a starter? This is a great question.
Yes.
You want to kick it off? You want me to kick it off?
I think that the logical answer is moving a player down, and that player down is Sonny Styles. And Styles he's got the size, he's got the ability. We saw multiple times him coming off of the edge and making plays. I don't necessarily think that they need to go into the portal and get another linebacker. Now, will we know a little bit more about this after spring ball? Yes. So that's why in my eyes, we're looking at offensive tackle. I think we need an elite. If they can somehow, some way, get another elite player at that level, go get them. But I think linebacker is a need, but I don't think it's a super pressing need. Ohio State's recruited very well at the position as well. You got CJ Hicks behind him, who's a former 5-star. Cody Simons played well. So I think that the fix is inside of the program. I don't necessarily think that they will go out. Now, will they go out and maybe get a depth piece that, is kind of insurance if, the move for Styles doesn't work out? Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. But I think that the most logical answer for me right now is to drop Styles down, get him on the field, a good amount of time at linebacker, because he played inside the box and he could do it. And I know he could do it. He's got the speed. He's not the best coverage guy, which I think that plays into the fact that he probably is better suited at linebacker. I mean, he's like 6'4", 225 pounds. Dude puts on 10, 15 pounds in the offseason. He's sitting at 240, 6'4", 240. That is a prototypical NFL linebacker. That's exactly what you're looking for. And he's got the experience. He understands what the defense is. Moving him down the spot, I think that makes the most sense. But, it really depends on what happens in the spring. I think that right now, I think that Ohio State, I would say that they're done in the portal unless, that elite dude comes in. And I don't really see an elite guy, jumping into the portal at the current moment. And again, I'll go back to the fact that the academic calendar plays a big part of this. School started for all these players. And again, they would not be able to participate in winter conditioning and spring ball right now if they were to enroll somewhere else. So I don't really think at this point in time, due to that, we're going to see another addition until possibly the spring. But it's not out of the the woodworks to say that Ohio State could add another line.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you're saying. The focus is definitely offensive line. You're going to see an addition on the offensive line, whether it's at the end of this cycle or whether it's in the spring cycle. They're going to add pieces to the offensive line. They made it very clear that they were looking at linebackers, but I think that was more of that guy was there. The kid from Cal was the leading tackler over there. Right. That was a guy with some good length that could kind of fill in that weird edge rushing role. Not necessarily your classic Tommy Eichenberg or Cody Simon. But there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of good players here. You got Cody Simon, who came back, and that was a guy who's probably going to be a late round draft pick who's dealt with a lot of injuries, but that's a former 4-star, 5-star recruit who's an Army All-American caliber player who's going to get a full crack. I mean, that was a guy who's taking snaps from Steel Chambers, who's likely going to be a mid-round draft pick, and he was taking snaps from right behind him. You got CJ Hicks, who's going to be competing for a spot.
Right.
CJ Hicks is probably going to start, to be honest with you, another former 5-star recruit from the state of Ohio. Every offseason we hear, or not every offseason, but every press conference, it feels like some writer asks, like, when is CJ Hicks going to play? When is CJ Hicks going to play? Jim Knowles has said glowing things about him, so this is probably going to be the year. And then you got Gabe Powers right behind him. That's another former 4-star, 5-star kid from Marysville, Ohio, that we talked about before the show. That guy's going to get snaps. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's going to get time. Arvell Reese was another 5-star kid from Glenville. Yes. Glenville, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. From Glenville last year. He was a true freshman, and They said a lot of positive things about him
I don't
last
know.
year.
Just to quickly interject on that, I don't know if Reese is going to end up being a linebacker. I think they're experimenting with him and his hand on the ground.
That'll be interesting.
Moving him down to an end.
Either way, that's a guy that's going to be in the mix for whatever.
He's played linebacker, so he's got a little bit of experience back there.
And if you're talking about guys that don't fit the box, or so Sonny, you mentioned Sonny Styles, the incoming Caleb Downs coming in allows them a lot of freedom with Sonny Styles. Sonny 100%. Styles does not have the hips or the flexibility that Caleb Downs has. Sonny Styles has All-American potential. This is a guy who reclassified to get into college early.
He's like 19 right now.
Yeah, this is a guy who's big, long. He could be linebacker. I still don't have an issue with him at safety, just being, more of it in the box, coming down, smacking the run game. Safety, a guy who blitzes off the edge. I think he does a great job at that. But he's going to be in the mix. Court Williams is another guy, former 4-star, 5-star guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries, was recruited as a linebacker. They moved him to safety, got hurt again. But that this defense allows for a lot of flexibility at that position. You're not necessarily the days where you're looking for 3 linebackers that fit a specific stereotype like Schlegel, Carpenter, and Hawk are done. You're going to be seeing guys that move in and out, and that includes guys. We saw Jack Sawyer stand up a lot 2 years ago. That was the wrong move, but you're going to see a lot of that with guys that, are maybe, Court Williams would be an example of that linebacker, safety linebacker.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth there. They're not going to go out of their way to grab a guy, just because. They got plenty of guys there. They even got that transfer in last year from Northwestern, the former 4-star kid that was the highest rated recruit to go to Northwestern in last year's class. Yeah. And he transferred to Ohio State. He didn't see the field at all. He transferred very late in the game.
Right.
I don't think
that's when Fitzgerald got fired.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to see time this year. He's kind of behind the 8 ball with a lot of those kids. But that's also very, the point is that there's so much talent that it's hard to even name all of them. So I don't think it's a necessity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that that's something that, you're going to see Ohio State really go after. Now, again, if there's a fit, there's a fit. But at the current moment, I think that they're going to kind of sit back and wait. Like I said, I just don't see another addition coming in the transfer portal until at least the spring. I think they're good. They're good at linebacker. They got a ton of talent. I mean, yes, the talent has to produce, which some of it hasn't. I'm looking at you, CJ Hicks, former 5-star, waiting 3 years to play. And he should have been on the field a lot earlier, making a bigger impact if you're a 5-star, right? But sometimes it takes a little while for some guys for the light bulb to turn on. And maybe it does this offseason when he sees that, hey, you know what? My path to playing time is much easier than it was a couple of years ago now that I don't have, an Eichenberg in front of me, So we'll see how that works out. But, at the current moment, I think we're both on the same page. I think that offensive line is at the top of the list. And then, if a linebacker comes out in the spring that they can't say no to, I don't think they will. But I don't see, that being the focus. I still think that offensive line is going to be that main focus.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of frustration with the fan base. I shouldn't say frustration, but the fan base is very much, hey, here's the new shiny toy. Like, if you can't play now, you can't play, right? And I understand that, right? I'm a big proponent of, if the dog's going to bite, he's going to bite when he's a puppy. John Cooper. But these guys like Cody Simon and Court Williams struggle with injury. Don't throw them in the trash. Those guys were 5-star recruits for a reason. They're still here for a reason. Cody Simon played really well. I don't know why people automatically want to bench him for CJ Hicks. He played really well to round out the season. At least I thought. And there's a good track record of guys not competing at Ohio State till their 3rd or 4th year. You look at Terry McLaurin. You look at Will Allen. You mentioned Mike Doss. Will Allen.
He's a great example, dude. Took forever, and then all of a sudden he got healthy and blew up in the NFL.
Yeah. So there's a lot of guys.
Right there.
Hopefully these guys develop, whether at Ohio State, not in the NFL. But
but it happens though. There's
a history.
The talent's there. Sometimes it just doesn't work out in a certain place, and age, experience, etc.
Yeah.
It just unfortunately for the Browning thing is like, oh man, maybe we should have put him as a Russian instead of having him as
that's a good example of why Jim Knowles is here, because the misuse of guys like Brian Browning. But don't throw those guys away. Wait to see what they can do. I mean, it's cool to look at the new shiny toy, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of talent in that room.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And speaking of, some of that new talent and some of those guys, all those transfer guys got a chance to talk today, Josh. And I think the biggest takeaway for me was the fact that Will Howard, which you tried to poo-poo on earlier, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That Will Howard actually entertained going into the NFL draft. He said that his big thing was he got an invite to the Senior Bowl. Was really kicking the tires of doing that, but again, a chance to play for a powerhouse, win a national championship, improve his draft stock. Because I really think like when I went over and I watched over the last 2 years of his highlights, man, he is a very good player. The skill position that they had, they had Deuce Vaughn for a season there with Howard, and Deuce Vaughn had his best season with Will Howard as his quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about a guy who's never, ever at this level played with the kind of talent that he's going to play with Saturdays in the fall in Columbus. He was hyping up the wide receiver room. He's like, man, like Jeremiah Smith. He's like, I really haven't had a chance to really get to know him, but I've seen him work out and I see what he can do. And holy crap, he is, that's sky high. Really good remarks. Carnell Tate was another guy that he named off of Mekambuka. I mean, obviously, he hasn't played with this type of offensive talent, and I think that when you look at what he brings and the fact that the offense, Bill O'Brien is going to not going to force feed the run from the quarterback. But when you got a guy that's 6'5", like 240 pounds, who's shown that he can run the ball, I think that brings a different element that we haven't seen over the past few years of the Ohio State offense. As awesome as CJ Stroud was, not a runner. Kyle McCord, not a runner. When was the last time that we were like, the offense was like really, really like, I mean, okay, the passing offense. I'm talking about the offense in general, right? I mean, Justin Fields. And Justin Fields had a little bit of both.
That's not necessarily fair, because we know now that CJ Stroud is a runner. And we knew then that CJ Stroud was a runner too, because his very first play in Ohio State uniform was like a 50-yard run. Right?
But he didn't though. But maybe it's the coaches telling him not to run.
That's
maybe
Ryan Day.
Maybe Ryan Day said, "Man, don't run. We don't need you to run. We can't get you hurt because I know what's behind you, and it ain't pretty."
Maybe, I don't know. But we also, if you look at Justin Fields and his stats compared with other guys that had his rushing capability, they're not where you would think they would be, right? No. Like Justin Fields he had like 300, 400 rushing yards a season. Like that's not.
But
we know now that that's.
But
not
I think it's part. I think it's part of the threat.
It's fair. I think that it's very clear that Ryan Day doesn't want his quarterback to run the ball, but he's got Bill O'Brien there now. And the difference between Will Howard and those other guys' quarterback style is Will Howard is very much, like you mentioned it earlier, the JT Barrett style of runner. Mm-hmm. I don't see anything. I'm going to tuck it, get my three. The quarterback draw type, right? Not the scramble around and get 11 yards. The quarterback draw type, right? The 6'5". So I think he's going to have more faith in that. I mean, he ran the ball with Devin Brown back there, and Will Howard is built, like a bigger Devin Brown. So I do think you're right. I think that you're going to see more design quarterback runs, but I just want to make it clear that I don't think that the limitations that were shown by the previous quarterbacks in the running game are their fault, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I agree with you. I don't think that is really on them. It's not.
Yeah.
I think some of it has to fall on Ryan Day. And now
that's one of the frustrating parts that I have towards Ryan Day.
Right. And now it feels like, No, I mean, now with Bill O'Brien, Ryan Day can be that CEO type of guy. He doesn't have to sit there and call plays and not pay attention to other stuff. He can kind of sit back and kind of look at the grand scheme of things and do all the other things and let Bill O'Brien do his thing and run his offense. I think that's a lot of people are like, well, Bill O'Brien had a terrible offense in New England. Well, look, can you name us one New England Patriot wide receiver?
Well, other than their best receiver was Kendrick Bourne, who was a rugby player. But this is the NFL. That's completely different. If you look at his last offense, we've talked about. If you want more Bill O'Brien talk, definitely go click on last week's show. Mm-hmm. But Bill O'Brien was, I stand by. I'll say it again. He was the best hire Ohio State possibly could have made. This is a guy who, when he coached Alabama, they were averaging 40 points per game, and their quarterback won the Heisman Trophy. So, and those were some of the weakest offensive lines in Alabama history. So, kudos to him, in my opinion. Plus, one of the reasons why Ryan Day brought him in was not necessarily to do what he wants to do, is to kind of be he has a lot of yes men in the room. But back to positives that I've gotten from that conversation, the transfer portal conversation or the Will Howard conversation, was the Jeremiah Smith thing. I think Jeremiah Smith is going to play. We've talked about that.
100%.
I think that this really kind of like solidifies that he's going to play a lot,
yeah.
and I'm very excited for it. Now, the negatives, not the negatives, but something I do disagree with is I saw the whole NFL thing by a few people. It wasn't just you. Let me ask you this. Where would you have drafted Will Howard?
Third, fourth round? I don't think he's really.
No. Third round?
Yeah, third, fourth round. I think
How many
you look at
quarterbacks you think go in the third round or go?
I think that, he's better than he's a mid type of guy with what he has shown on tape. He's going to get a year to really show it. I think he can. I think he maxes out.
No, that's not
like
what
the second round.
That's not what I'm.
You're talking about this year.
I don't know. He could be.
He said third. He said he was getting third, fourth round grades from when he.
I don't believe that.
Put in his paperwork. That's what he said. That's what he said. Don't kill the messenger. That's what he said.
I don't believe it. I mean, because you know what you got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 7 quarterbacks in this draft class that are immediately better than him by a large margin. That's fine if that's what he wants to say, but that's to me is pretty crazy, man. Maybe I'll meet you halfway. I'll say 4th to 5th rounder. I'll say 4th to 5th. Third rounder though. I mean, think about the quarterbacks going the third round. Hendon Hooker. You know what I mean? Like, is he on that level? Yeah, dude. I mean, Dak Prescott was like, that's a guy that was throwing 4,000 yards or running for 1,000 yards at Mississippi State. He's not on that level.
No, I get that. No, I get it.
Michael Pratt is probably going to be a third rounder this year. That guy, that's who Ohio State wanted. Ohio State was holding out for Michael Pratt to,
Yeah.
That to me was somewhat a little bit of baloney, but I think Will
That's
Howard
what he said.
I wrote a piece about Will Howard a couple weeks ago about it was a scouting report on Will Howard, and it's very hard to pick apart his game because there's no blatant weaknesses in his game. Yeah. I want to be very clear. I like Will Howard. But the reason I like Will Howard is much different than the reason everybody else likes Will Howard. I don't view Will Howard as a Heisman favorite. I don't view Will Howard as a first round. I like Will Howard because he's not going to make mistakes.
Right.
And when they're down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, they're going to have a lot of trust in him. And I have a lot of trust in him, and he's going to make the right decisions.
I'm not sure the defense is going to let them get down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But yeah,
I'm just saying, because Kyle McCord, you could see where the game plan this year with Kyle McCord in crucial spots was to have him avoid – don't put him in a position where we have to win the game on his arm. That's not going to be the case with Will Howard. Will Howard is very, very smart. He doesn't – He's calm. He doesn't change the way he plays the game. Those are probably his best traits is the fact that he's consistent, his consistency and his intelligence. And those aren't bad things, but to say the whole draft thing was just kind of wild to me. I saw to defend Will Howard too. Some people were upset because there's a couple of games where he threw multiple interceptions. A lot of those games were games where he was kind of throwing Josh Allen interceptions where it's like, it doesn't really matter anymore. And he's trying to make something happen.
40, 50 yards down the field. Right.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I don't care. You know what I mean? The interceptions that matter are the interceptions that Kyle McCord almost threw against Notre Dame. Right. Went right through that guy's hands. Those are the things that matter. Game defining interception.
The two he had against Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the issues, right? Those are the things you're trying to avoid. Will Howard doesn't do that. I mean, every quarterback does it every now and again, but he much less than Kyle McCord. That's the big benefit to Will Howard. And I think Ryan Day knows that. I think that Ryan Day is very well aware because he didn't. I'm going to be very clear. He wanted Will Howard, but the dude was Michael Pratt and Dylan Gabriel were the names that we kept hearing. And they made a serious run at Dylan Gabriel, and it didn't go their way. And they were waiting on Michael Pratt, and it didn't happen because he went to the NFL draft. Those were the names we kept hearing. The Will Howard name kind of came up after those guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's I still think for what he needs to do and the fit, again, it goes back to fit. He fits what Ohio State needed. And you're right. I don't think he's going to be he's the run of Heisman Trophy candidates obviously ended this year, with McCord, but I don't think he's going to be that guy. but he doesn't need to be that guy.
Doesn't need that.
And that's the beauty of what Ohio State has built right now. He does not need to be that guy. All he's got to do is spread the ball out to his receivers, hand the ball off to Henderson and Judkins. Like, come on. Like, you're looking at an offense that just has every single piece that you would ask for. And like I said before, he's never played an offense that has this many skill position players that are going to be first-round type of NFL.
No, but you could also say that about anybody, right?
That's true.
Dylan Gabriel, his best wide receiver wasn't it Stoops' kid?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could say there was a lot of quarterbacks in the portal that you could say that about, but I agree with you. You know, we didn't even talk about Emeka Egbuka, who I was shocked when he came back because I thought that was going to be a guy who's going to go in the first round after he tested.
Me too.
Yeah. But yeah, I like Will Howard. I want to be very clear. I like Will Howard. I just think I don't know. You're kind of hearing the same. Remember when Trey Sermon first transferred in? Everybody's like, "Oh, Trey Sermon!" And Trey Sermon had like really good last three games before he left. He really did. Maybe the best
awesome.
team. They were great.
Awesome.
They were great, but he did nothing for 8 games. No. You know what I mean? And that's fine. He did what he had to do when he had to do it. I kind of envision Will Howard being that guy. He's going to be the Brock Purdy of Ohio State.
That's fine, and I'm good with it. Brock Purdy's playing for the Super Bowl in 2 weeks.
Like I said, it's great. It's great. I
am good. I am good with that. And if he's going to be the Brock Purdy, it's just getting the ball out to the skill position players.
Exactly.
We're going to have a whole different conversation come next year where we're talking about him because we'll be saying that he did his job and did exactly what he needed to do because really that's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to win games by himself. He's got other players on that roster that will win games for him. He just needs to get the ball to them. You know, he doesn't need to stare down Marvin Harrison Jr. Harrison Jr. is gone. But he doesn't need to do it. McCord, when he panicked, it was Harrison. When he panicked, it was Harrison.
Yeah.
Every single time. And everyone knew that. And that was the problem. Everyone knew
we both agree because you're scouting. We both put out scouting reports and we both said the same thing with different words because you compared him to JT Barrett. Yeah. JT Barrett wasn't a first round quarterback, but JT Barrett didn't even get drafted. JT Barrett wasn't he was a Heisman finalist, but JT Barrett didn't light the world on fire like you're seeing with Jaden Daniels.
Well, he owns like 40 some odd Big Ten records. So
I know, but a lot of that was, you know what I mean? Like, okay, was it the way he did it and the way Dwayne Haskins did it?
That's true.
Right. Or, they're different.
Way different. Right? Of course. Yeah. They're definitely different. But, you're still talking about one of the most decorated Ohio State quarterbacks.
Right. And I understand that. And I think Will Howard could be that. It would not shock me if Will Howard had 35 friggin' records at the end of this because the offense is going to be that explosive. It just is. And he's not going to make mistakes. You could, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are like that in college. Look at, Cliff Kingsbury, Sonny Cumbie, L. Roberson at Kansas State.
Oh, man, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Reggie Ball at Georgia Tech. Yeah. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are very successful at the college level, and all they have to do is not suck. Right. And that was the issue last year. It's McCord. I don't want to crap on McCord. Ryan Day had no trust in McCord. Whether that was McCord's fault or the lack of development, I don't know. That was in the past. We're not going to look in the rearview mirror. We're going to keep going forward. But with Will Howard, you're not going to have to worry about it. And I don't, JT Barrett, we know his limitations. JT Barrett's got a lot of cool records. He does. He's got a lot of great records. But we know his limitations. Out of the quarterback, Ohio State quarterbacks in the last 20 years, is he on your 2 deep? No. Honestly, no. He might not even be on your Ohio State practice squad, dude.
No, he's on my top 5.
He's on your what?
He's top 5. He's on my top 5 over the last 20
That's
years.
Probably fair, right? But he's not in your top 4 because you got what? Because what do you think? You're thinking Stroud,
Haskins, Stroud.
Fields.
Well, Haskins unfortunately only did it for 1 season. That's the only issue that I have with Haskins. So that's what that he drops a little bit. So I haven't. I think I put it on Twitter the other day. I think I had Fields, Stroud.
I wasn't ranking them either. I was just saying that those guys.
I definitely like someone on Twitter, right? And I think I had Fields, Stroud, Haskins, JT, and I'm missing somebody.
God, you had Fields over Stroud?
Yeah. I think Justin Fields was the most physically gifted quarterback. Okay, here it is.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't.
Fields, Stroud. Actually, I had JT at 3.
Really?
Fields, Stroud, JT, Troy Smith, Dwayne Haskins.
How dare you disrespect Dwayne Haskins, dude?
I told you.
Bro.
It's one season.
That dude slung it. Okay. So it's Dwayne Haskins' fault. He was so good. He only had to be here for 1 year. That's also the problem with a lot of those college records, is that you got guys that just
JT was around for a while.
You had this guy. You know who was. What do we say all the time? Who was the last Ohio State running back to start multiple years? It's Carlos Snow, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
there's a reason for that.
Henderson's going to do it.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the day and age of NIL is going to change that a bit, huh? Well, do we count that? How many games did he start this past year? Did he start a majority of the games?
So, I mean, injuries obviously
right?
Pulled him back. But I think that when you're talking about the first guy that trots on the field day one, I think Henderson's going to have 3 years.
I would be. You think so?
I think so. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see how many games. It would be interesting to track.
I mean, continuously starting. I mean, his problem is injuries. He can't stay healthy.
Because I think that's the same thing with Carlos Snow. So that's fair. I'll give it to you.
So if Henderson's healthy, he's RB1 every single year he's on campus.
I guess, would you count Master Teague as well? Because technically day one.
Yeah. I guess you kind of have to, right?
You have to count Mike Weber too, even though it's day one.
Hey, Mikey Weber was a damn good running back. He was okay. Damn good running back.
Teague was okay. Weber was better than Teague.
He was good. He was. I mean, Master Teague. If he stayed healthy, I mean.
You're right. Though Weber was in a different tier than Teague.
He was really, really good. I think a lot of people forget him too. I'm glad you brought up his name because I think a lot of people just kind of gloss over how good Mike Weber is.
Yeah, he was solid. I think he's got a Super Bowl ring too, doesn't he?
I'm not sure.
I think he was with the Chiefs last time they won the Super Bowl.
Was he?
I think.
Good for Mikey Weber. He deserves it. He's a good player.
I mean, I really thought he was going to tear it up in the.
Me too, man. Me too. I thought he was going to do something in the NFL, man. I've been wrong about a lot of those guys.
He had an uphill battle when he got drafted to the Cowboys because they were pretty stacked at the running back position. They had Zeke, Rod Smith, and then they might have had Pollard back then too. But when he was with the Generals, they drafted, he was one of the first draft picks in the USFL, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if he got hurt or if the money wasn't good enough. I don't know what happened, but
probably got hurt. No, again, unfortunately.
Yeah. Interesting though. Interesting walk down memory lane.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to read all about what the majority, I took like snippets. I went on Twitter and took snippets. I found a bunch of clips on all those players who were talking today. So go check out Buckeyes Wire. It's got a ton of it. Everybody but Julian Sand, I believe, talked. Most of the videos, some of them are not involving Seth McLaughlin because for some odd reason people didn't want to take videos. They just posted, a picture of him and then his quote and everything. But there's a lot of good stuff on there. So go ahead and read that if you get a chance. I mean, it's I tried to get the most important stuff out there. I thought one last thing on that, and that's probably we should probably wrap it up after that. It's not surprising that Caleb Downs had over 100 phone calls immediately.
No, not surprising at all.
That young man can play for every single Division I program in the country, and they all went after him. Oh, actually, you know what? One other thing, Judkins actually said that his decision had nothing to do with what TreVeyon Henderson's.
Really?
Nothing. He went for the best fit. He didn't.
So I do think that the whole he wants to be the running back number one thing is a little overhyped, especially if you're a guy that's already proven it, because your shelf life is so short as a running back that you don't really care. This is a guy that's already proven it, right? So he wants to get enough touches to splash and show what he can do, win a ring and bounce. So sharing the backfield with TreVeyon Henderson, I don't think that would deter me if I was a top guy either. You know what I mean? Like I think that those days are kind of over. If that makes sense, the days of wanting 30 carries a game.
No, you're not seeing Eddie Georges anymore.
No, I mean you are, but they're not really voluntarily. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's an issue, right?
I mean, if there's a monster gap between RB1 and RB2, of course you're going to see a guy getting 20, 25, 30 carries sometimes. But I mean, let's be real here. 10, 15 touches between the two of them, and you're going to get 150, 200 yards, and
Yeah.
we're going to get a couple scores in there too. So I'm just like, this backfield is just.
It's going to be fun.
Oh,
it's going to be fun. I'm
It
very excited
is.
about that too. Quinshon Judkins is special.
He is. He
He's
is.
a special player.
And you throw it in there. And on top of this, I actually think that this will help Henderson as well. I think it'll help him keep the mileage down, keep him healthier. And you're going to see him have potentially the best season of his Buckeye career. Even though the stats, he's not going to, I don't think he runs for, 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. But if he runs for, 1,012 touchdowns and averages 6-7 yards a carry, job well done.
Yeah, I'm not going to be. I think that you're potentially right. I also wouldn't be surprised if his stats were insane, just because
could be.
The offense is just. This offense has got a lot of talent. There's no reason they can't wear him down and do what he needs to do. Hopefully, it wears him down to the point where Ryan Day can actually give some of these true freshmen some plays, some stats.
Dallin Hayden needs to play too, man. Dallin Hayden needs to play. That dude's good.
I'm very excited about Julian Sayin too. We'll keep that for the next pod, but I feel like I'm ripping on Will Howard, but man, I really wouldn't sleep on Sayin. I really, really, really don't want to sleep on him.
I just can't see a true freshman coming in,
man,
and doing it.
Woo! With Bill O'Brien running the show, and there's enough talent around him, it could be fun.
I mean, do you get here's the hypothetical. Do you get him? Is he QB2 then over Aaron Nolan?
I think so.
Right, because you have to think that Keenholz and Brown are most likely hitting the corner, right?
I don't think Keenholz does. I don't think they both do. I think one does.
You think one does?
I don't even know, huh?
You think just one of them?
I don't even know. It depends on how things go. Ryan Day's weird about those young guys too. Yeah. I like Julian Sayin, but that doesn't mean Ryan Day is going to give him the crown. Even if he shows out in practice, Ryan Day is very, I got to give it to him. He's a very good communicator. He does, like to give his older guys the reps. I mean, better than anybody. You were complaining about Julian Fleming for 4 months, right?
I sure was. I sure was.
Whether that was right or wrong, I don't know. Julian Fleming, I like Julian Fleming. I like him more than you do. But you made some valid arguments because there were some valid drops, and what we saw from Cardell Tate and Brandon Ennis were pretty impressive. So I'm with you. It'll be interesting to see though. But I think that Julian Sayin is going to make some plays that's going to make some people go, hello.
Yeah, he's giving me CJ Stroud vibes.
Yeah,
a little bit of leg, a little bit more legs in there.
It'll be interesting.
He's got oh man, I'm watching his highlights. I'm just like, wow, I could not believe that quarterback room is stacked like it is. Again.
Dude, I like our throwback. So with the offseason coming up, I like our throwback conversations. We'll have to have more.
Yeah.
I actually just bought a Kenyon Rambo high school card.
Was it a 4? Was he wearing number 4?
Yeah.
Nice. There he is.
Yeah, dude. Those Brooks cards. Yeah. So I like our little throwback conversations. We can talk about that amazing wide receiver core for Kenyon Rambo and Red in Germany one year.
Yeah, oh man.
Hey, dude, but those guys were good. But I mean,
they were good. Before
Urban Meyer got here, that was. That was a top 5 receiving. Those are the top 5 duo, right? Number 1 was probably David Boston and D. Miller.
Loved D. Miller was awesome too. Loved Dave Boston. Dave Boston's what made me a Buckeye fan.
That's what I'm saying. But that's probably the best duo.
When he did that robot in the end zone against Arizona State, that made me a Buckeye fan. That is the exact moment I was like, "That's my team."
And then. That was actually Kenyon Rambo was a part of that receiving corps.
Yeah.
He was a true freshman that
year. Yeah.
The hype was Kenyon Rambo was going to beat out D. Miller, and then D. Miller kind of grew up a little.
Yep. But Dave Boston made me a Buckeye fan.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's a goat. He is a goat.
He was awesome. I was very, very sad when he didn't do so great in the NFL.
He was all right.
He had a couple good years. He had a couple. He had a couple good years, and they got popped for juice.
He was very good with the Cardinals, but he got popped for juice after he got hurt, which is bad. But
yeah, I don't remember. Back then, I didn't follow the NFL too much. So as soon as as soon
I'm
as they
pretty sure
bounced. As soon as they bounced, I was
healthy.
like, all right, I've had enough of you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he couldn't get help when he hurt himself in Arizona, couldn't get healthy, and then he was
Oh
like,
yeah, that offense had Joe Jermaine, Michael Wiley, man. Oh
oh, yeah.
man. Oh man. Right?
Stanley Jackson. You're talking about '98,
Joe,
right?
yeah, Joe Jermaine, Stanley
Yeah,
Jackson, Michael
was
Wiley.
Wiley a freshman then?
Yeah, and he played a lot too.
Yes, he
He
did.
played a lot. I remember watching number 5 from his back with his little little pad that he had hanging
Yeah,
off of his
the
shoulder
blur,
pads.
the Buckeye
Yeah.
blur, dude.
Oh my god. Oh,
The
my
Buckeye blur, yeah, man.
those guys were so fun to watch.
Yeah, there
So
were
fun to
some crazy talent. I think Darnell Sanders was the tight end too, which
watch.
before the day and age of Kate Stover, Darnell
Yeah.
Sanders was right
Darnell,
up there.
he was a dude too.
I think he even left Ohio State early.
Yep.
Yeah, there were some dudes that I think was
Oh, yeah.
Charles Bentley on that team. That
I think he was. I think LaCharles was a little bit later. I think he was a little bit later.
Yeah, and then yeah, man, another good receiving core: Chris Sanders and Joey Galloway.
Oh yeah.
Chris Sanders.
We're gonna have to in one of the offseason pods. We're gonna have to hit the way back. We're gonna have to hit the way back machine and like rank our favorite Buckeyes from certain eras. So we'll definitely do that. Well,
all right, man.
Yeah. Anything else you got?
No, man. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Keatley 16. Check out our work at Buckeyes Wire. I have some sources hit me up every time a former Ohio State player gets hired as a head coach. So those articles, articles been kind of fun to watch. Mike Jacobs just got hired by Mercer Football, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm going to try to pump out a scouting report for Quinshon Judkins here soon too.
Yeah, I'm going to go be disappointed and watch that Buckeye basketball game against Illinois. My wife is an Illinois alum too.
Oh, there you go. That's fun.
I told her last night. I was like, "Hey, honey, we're gonna watch a basketball game." She goes, "Oh, what game?" I was like, "Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'm gonna watch a basketball game tomorrow night, and you're gonna be interested in it too." She goes, "Oh, our teams are playing." She goes, "I was like, yeah." I was like, "Who do you think she's gonna win?" The Atlanta. I'm like, "Yeah, me too." Unfortunately,
I do want to give a shout out to Michael as well. That I worked with him at Nationwide. So,
nice.
So shout out former Nationwide coworkers. But all right, man. I'll go ahead and shut it down. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.